Well, aloha everybody, and welcome to our afternoon session. This is going to be, we're going to show back to back a couple of our wonderful farms here on Maui, Maui Bees and Lapa'au Farm. And after that, we'll have a Q&A with the farmers. Michael Marchand is harvest day today up at Lapa'au Farm, so he's going to zoom in. He's going to take some time away from his harvest to zoom in, and Mark and Leah Damon, they're here physically, so we'll get to enjoy their company and physically here and be able to answer any questions you folks have. These two farms are just quite a wonderful example of what's possible with agriculture here, and not only a diversified agricultural system, but a system that employs community in a way that they make it about their community, the importance of community and in their systems. So with that said, we have we're going to boot this up right now. We're going to show Maui Bees, and then we'll get on to Lapa'au.
Aloha everybody, my name is Vincent Kimura, President of Hawaii Farmers Union United. And we're here at Maui Bees up in Kula, Maui today to share with you the great example of what a whole system of agriculture represents with animal production and food production.
Well, we started about 13 years ago, just growing a home garden. People started asking us if they could jump in on it, could they buy stuff from us? And we were more than happy to do that. And we just started doing our thing, and then we were quickly overwhelmed by how much work it was. So we started bringing in people, woofers, to help, and it just grew from there. We grew this all together. You can't do it by yourself.
Well, my inspiration was I would go to the Body and Soil conferences and leave so jazzed, and I want the good food. If it were possible to buy it, I would have bought it. But you have to grow it to have the prana, the mana, the life force in it. We're beekeepers, second generation beekeepers, and we love the bees. We love the chickens and the turkeys and the cows and the goats and the vegetables and the orchards, and you just quickly fill up 4 acres, and then you start going vertical with the farming and everything that you want to produce, and then you want a little flower, and so it just becomes in your blood and part of you.
Yeah, we initially started with bees. I had some bees on the island for a few years before we actually started the farm. We just split them, kept splitting them, increasing their numbers with an eye on just producing honey because everyone was asking for it. So we had a ready market. So we went from 11 hives to 44 to 88 to 160, and we're up to around 300 now. The farming went along with it, so it became all complementary, especially when we got the animals and we started getting the milk for production on the farm for our own consumption. And that was just the land of milk and honey. It was the best.
And this is Mr. Compost, so in a biodynamic system where you have everything going back to the soil, the cow is the major component. That's the back end of where you get your fertility.
Well, we make compost here by the ton. We do sell it as well, but we basically recycle it all back into the land. A lot of it goes under trees, a lot of it goes into the garden, and on the pastures. It's been a long learning process of how to do that properly and as quickly as possible, but it's all about nutrient cycling. And the other most important thing about the farm is the community that has created itself around the farm, meaning the outer community, the people that come here and support us, and also our workforce who are just amazing. Our staff are just incredible. And it's really taught me that agriculture doesn't live in a vacuum. It really requires the kind of human connection that is about stewardship. It fosters the stewardship and makes people care and love where they are and what they're doing. So when we started looking at how to lay the farm out, basically we ask the question. We go sit in the pasture and say, what do you want to be? Show us what to do, because we had no idea. And then we started looking at the lay of the land, and it just made sense that the orchards should go where it's not flat, and the pastures should go where it's flat, and obviously the gardens. It wasn't easy to figure it out because you had to figure out how big are the roads and how much room do you need to turn and all of these little components.
And then you figure out, what do you really want? What plants do you want? What trees do you want? What do you really, oh, and there's no more space, but I really want this.
You get very excited about the project, you build it out, and then you realize, oh, that's too much. That's just, it doesn't work. And you start to form a holistic context.
And the land that we stand on, it has so much input and it has so much connection. It has so much, it's like, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this. It's like, oh, okay.
In terms of cycling nutrients, we have about 200 layers, and we move those in movable coops so that the manures are spread pretty evenly across the land. Where we have the cows in a barnyard where we do our milking, they're concentrated, so we get a lot of manures there, so we have to pick that up and bring it up and make compost with it. Otherwise, the animals they're naturally manure spreaders, and we just manage them so that they can spread it as effectively as possible. Whenever you farm something like this over and over again, there's really not much rest period because we're farming all year round. It's very easy to deplete the soils. So what you have to do is build the biology, and then the biology does the nutrient cycling. It's more important to have that system, the biological system that can take what nutrients are there and make them bioavailable, than it is to put a lot of stuff in the soil to make it rich. Basically what we do is do the cover cropping, which keeps the soil as alive as possible. We don't till. So we set up the cover crops, we cut them, we let them compost into the ground, and then we plant right into that.
So you have this amazing system of roots, and then out of the roots are these hairline roots, and out of the hairline roots are mycorrhizal and fungi and all these other supportive parts of the soil that you don't want to disturb, because if this something in the soil says, oh, I need some of that, and there's some over there, they have a system to communicate and bring it over, and that's the magic of biodynamics.
A lot of times they'll start by tilling the soil just to break everything, and then you start putting cover crops in to bring the biology back that you just destroyed by tilling it. The other thing is, when you till soil, you drive the carbon out of it, and the carbon is what creates the structure of the soil. So one of the great things about this method of farming is that it has a climate impact. It is sequestering long-term carbon and storing it in the soil where it actually does good. So when we're done growing a row crop, we will rake the wood chips off to the side and then spread this seed down, and we'll cover it with a white permeable cloth to keep the birds from eating the seed. It'll sprout and grow in, and then it grows up. Maybe in a month or so it'll be this tall, starts to flower. The bonus is we get some buckwheat honey for the bees, which is good. And then it's cut right at the bottom, close to the ground, lay it down. We cover it with this black cloth to finish it. It's called solarizing. About 6 days or so, we pull it off, and then we just plant directly into that material that's now starting to be just a mulch. We've created a mulch from this. So what that does is we're allowing the carbon that these plants are capturing to be put close to the bacteria, where the bacteria can pull it down into the ground. And at the same time, we're growing the next crop. That's how it works. So this is the farm fertility program, where we use animal manures, both chicken and cow. And we bring the cow manure up from the loafing areas. We bring 6 cans every week and mix them with wood shavings and pile it. You have to have at least 1 cubic meter to start the thermal process, build up enough heat. And once we pile this, we keep adding to it for several weeks until it gets to be quite a large pile. And this is a pile that was started about 6 months ago. And if you dig down in here, you'll see there's quite a bit of heat coming out of here. It's running about 130 degrees and breaking those wood chips down. So that's hot to the touch. And we like it to be hot because it's a very fast process then. We keep turning it with the tractor, and then it's finally moved to the sifting area, and that pile is about a year old. Here we have a pile that's been about a year old, and it's broken down really nicely. You can hardly see any wood in it at all. There is a little bit, some of the larger chunks. We run it through a trommel sifter, and the trommel sifter is homemade. It's made out of bicycle wheels with the spokes removed. Basically make a cage with 3 bicycle wheels and then mounted in a framework, and it runs on an electric drill. So it's probably 150 bucks all in all, and the thing works like a champ. So I'm gonna demonstrate that. So you can see how nice and fine that is. And then you can see the material that it rejected because it's too coarse. And this will just go right back into the compost piles and do another run. So then this we take and put it in our pile. And this is what we use for the seed starts. But before we use it for the seed starts, we mix it with coconut coir, and we use it EM1 biologicals to jumpstart it. So that then it's used in the seed starts. Each of those plants goes in with a little plug of biology, and it goes in with a little plug of compost. And that's how we do it.
So everything is an integral part of the system. The chickens are in mobile chicken coops, which move every week. They're on wheels, and you can see this is beautiful green grass that is going to be their salad bowl as soon as we move them. And this grass is all eaten down, and they've done a really great job of pooping everywhere and fertilizing the trees and fertilizing the grass. And that's just cyclical of how you get the nutrients through the chickens into the land.
So chickens eat grass. Many people don't understand how much grass they're capable of eating, but they get a lot of good omega oils out of the grass. And if you look on one side of the fence, you'll see the grass before they got to it. And on the other side of the grass where they are now, you can see they've been there for 1 day. And that's the amount of grass they've been eating in just 1 day. When we harvest these birds and we open their crops are full of grass. And that's not because they don't have other food to eat. They're given a free choice grains to keep up their egg laying. So it's their choice to eat the grass. So this is how we extract the honey. We'll bring in 1,000 pounds or so from the bee yards. And the frames are individually uncapped. This is an uncapping machine, and Dusty's going to show you. So the uncapper takes off most of it. Sometimes it misses some, like on the back side, and then that has to be hand done by Sarah. And after the cappings are removed, the frame can go in the extractor. I put 20 frames in each extractor, and then centrifugal force throws the honey out of the frame. Once the frames are empty, they get stacked up and put back on the bees, and the bees rob them all out, so there's no loss, no waste. And once the honey is collected, It's pumped across the ceiling into these storage tanks where we allow the wax to float to the surface. We don't use any heat to separate wax and honey. We don't use it. It's a cold process. And in 24 hours, all of the wax has gone to the surface, and then we can bottle it. This is the bottling machine. So this is a proportioner, which puts the same amount of honey in every jar. It's important to note that we don't use any heat in this process because heat destroys the enzymes that the bees put into the honey to make it honey. And after the honey is bottled, then we label it and put it into a cool storage area. Temperature controlled. We hold it at about 58 degrees. And when we're done harvesting, this room is completely full, ceiling to floor. We harvest about 25,000 pounds per year. So this is our outreach to the community. We offer this exhibit. We call it the Bee Museum, and we have 2 observation hives here. And we have school groups that come. We also do tours. And basically people can come in and just see what the inside of a beehive looks like. And you can also see some of the processes that the bees go through to make honey in terms of communicating with each other, to tell other bees where the flowers are. And it's quite a fascinating process. This is the Maui Bees certified commercial kitchen. Right now these are apples that we actually grew on the farm. We're making one of the many products, either applesauce or apple pies or empanadas. A lot goes on in here during the day. We usually have at least 1 or 2 chefs working to produce food that goes out on the stand that's prepackaged. There's also bread baking that occurs in here at night. So we have a lot of fun in here. It's really good camaraderie. We built this farm stand 2 years ago as sort of the crowning part of the farm in order to, legally interface with the public and sell product. It's been a great boon for sure. It's been a community gathering area. It's like a cafe. People come, they sit down, they get food, they can eat it here outside. So it's really kind of special. It's created its own thing.
We're off the beaten path, definitely off the main road. But people come, the honey is a big attractant. Right now it's pumpkin time of year. People can make pumpkin pies. And
we also have fermented foods like sauerkrauts. We also produce a kombucha-like drink, which is called jun. It's made with honey.
yeah.
So we're trying to use as many products from the farm as we can. And it's been really a lot of fun. I love to see a lot of people out here enjoying themselves. And it was a monumental effort, believe me. It was really difficult to make it work. We opened the week that COVID hit, so it was kind of fun. But it was amazing because the community really loved it. They didn't have to go into the grocery stores, they could come and get their stuff here. So it was actually worked really well. We ended up hiring 2 or 3 different people, new employees, during that first year of COVID. So it was definitely a success in that regard.
On Thursday, there's a bee tour.
We do a bee tour where we dress people up in a bee suit and take them out to the beehives, and everybody's jazzed about that. And then we also do a regenerative agriculture tour where we do a little bit of education about soil biology. So both of those are really well received, and they're a lot of fun.
For a very long time, we supported the farm. It's not cheap, and it's quite expensive. And then finally, there was a tipping point where you just figure it out, or something happens.
The farm started producing enough income. For one reason, we've improved the soil, and the other was we connected with the community over time.
Yeah.
So basically, there was brand recognition, and people really trusted that whatever came out of this farm was the highest quality that we could produce. So no matter what we would put out, it would sell. It was amazing. It was just magic. And then we built the commercial kitchen, and that created the platform for even more of a cash flow and being able to pay staff properly. I'd say the first 3, 4, 5 years, we were just putting money in. It's really about building the confidence with the community. And once the community really trusts you, it's a beautiful thing. You can really do some wonderful things.
So that was an amazing video. Thanks to HFUU and thanks to our farmer extraordinaires, Mark and Leah Damon. We're going to have Q&A coming up after we show the next video, Lapa'au Farm. So please post your questions in the chat you have for Mark and Leah. You can post them now. We'll get to them after this next video. So we can just devote the rest of the meeting towards Q&A, okay? So again, I'd like to thank HFUU and all of our sponsors for making all this happen. As you can see on the screen here, we have a bunch of sponsors that made this occur. I hope you can hear me out there. So let's get into our next video with Michael Marchand and Lauren Marchand from Lapa'au Farm in beautiful downtown Olinda, Maui.
Hello, everybody. Vincent Mina, President of Hawaii Farmers Union United. We're here at Lapa'au Farm today, featuring this beautiful vegetable and mushroom farm and showing how their waste product from their mushroom production is utilized best into the fields to grow that strength of diversity and biology that they have, which is reflective of the wonderful vegetables that they grow here.
We started farming a few years ago mainly because a couple of reasons. I wanted to grow food for the community. I wanted to eat the healthiest food myself. For my kids, I want to be able to leave something behind that is valuable for them in the future, and to take care of the land in a good way felt like that was part of my mission here. The Lapa'au Farm is located in Olinda, a little bit above Makawao on the island of Maui, and we currently are on 22 acres, but we only farm about 1.5 acres. And our goal is to expand a little bit, but because we don't want to expand too much of the vegetables, we just want to be able to grow some of our own straw. That's our biggest product that we have to ship in, and so if we can start growing our own wheat and rice, then we'll be able to cycle our own products through our growing process instead of shipping them in. And that will decrease the amount of input that we have to grow our mushrooms on. On top of that, it gives us an extra product to sell, which would be some type of grain on the island, but then we can process all of the straw itself, utilize it for our mushrooms, and that'll completely close our loop. We do have a goal to build a pond, and that way it'll give us the ability to recycle water, have fish in it, and also help with our nutrient cycle of buying fish fertilizer. But that's a little bit farther down the line because it takes a little bit more engineering for us. Our yields usually on our 1.5 acres ranges throughout the year depending on the season, but it's between about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds a week. Some weeks are a little bit lower depending on the season, like late summer and early fall. Usually early springtime tends to be a lower period too, but peak summer and peak winter we tend to have higher periods because we do denser production and heavier plantings throughout the year when the seasons are right, because we have bug issues and rain issues. So we'll usually try to shift our production with the seasonal shifts of the weather. Our biggest crops are oyster mushrooms, salad mix, baby arugula. During the summertime, we do a lot of tomatoes and cucumbers. But all throughout the year, we're doing a lot of roots, so carrots, beets, radish, turnips, cauliflower, broccolini, sometimes onions and potatoes, seasonal as well. We do about 500 pounds of oysters every single week. And then the rest of that is in vegetable production, about maybe 300 pounds or so of baby greens, and then a mixture of our root crops and our brassicas. We do a little bit of a CSA too, but most of our product is wholesale. We really want to be able to provide food to as many people as possible, and so to provide food to distributors who can drive across the islands or who can get food to other people on the side of Kona or in places in Oahu, that helps our food go farther distances in our state. We would not ship outside of the state. Everything on our farm is packaged here, processed here. We don't import anything for us to resell, so we grow all of our vegetables organically. Our current practices in our field have to do with recycling all of our mushroom substrate. So after we get a few flushes and a few fruiting from our actual mushroom bags, we'll take all that mushroom compost and we put that back into the field. And the mushrooms digest a lot of cellulose and the carbon inside of that straw. So when we put it back in, we don't have an extraction of nitrogen that comes out of the soil as if you would put wood chips into the soil. You want to keep wood chips on top of the soil, but for us, we can plow back in that spent substrate because it's already taken out a lot of the cellulose. And so that adds in a lot of organic matter that'll be digested over the period of a few months for all the microbes and the organisms to continue to feed off of it. And that also gives the soil a little bit more porousness, so when we get heavy rains, it'll drain better, but it also works as a sponge and it holds the moisture too during the summertime. So that's a good way for us to recycle our used product of straw back into our soil and to increase the life of our soil. And that's our organic approach, along with some local fertilizers that we use from Oahu. So what we're doing is taking our mushroom substrate. We've already fruited multiple times out of this, and it's a very spongy material. All the white portion of it is the mycelium on the inside, and it's been digesting the cellulose inside of the straw. And after that happens, it becomes a lot more digestible in the soil as an organic matter. And so we take this and we'll spread it over our beds pretty evenly. About every 150 feet, we do about 4 bags. Any more than that, and it becomes a lot of undigested organic matter inside. And we'll plow it in, and that enables this stuff to slowly break down over time. Instead of being like a pre-digested type of compost, this will keep feeding it over about 3 to 4 months. And we'll use compost too here and there, but we found much better results in our beds and with the microorganisms by utilizing this. Seems to hold moisture really well, but help with our drainage at the same time. And it seems to be a pretty bioavailable food source for all the worms and all the other microbes as this begins to digest, on top of the fact that the mycelium is filled with a lot of sugars. And that enables more food inside the soil for all the microbes as well. It's also got some grain in there with the sawdust that's been mixed in from our spawn. So it's got some other food additives for the earthworms and other microbes to feed on. And if we left this longer in the bags, it'll continue to eat it and eat it. Eventually bugs will colonize inside of it, and then they'll begin to digest it. And we've left them for about a year before, and the bag that you saw condenses down into just a ball of poop from insect poop. So that's another good way to compost it if we didn't have enough space to put it back into the fields, or if other people didn't want to come and purchase it. But it just gets digested over a period of about a year. We farm bio-intensively, and to me what that means is bringing a lot of life into the soil to get a lot of yield out of the soil. And so by us putting in a lot of organic matter, and whether that be compost or a lot of our spent mushroom substrate, we're giving a lot of chances in the soil for the life to continue to repopulate and build larger and larger populations of organisms. And the more we can give to that soil and all of the creatures in there, the more they'll work to make sure our soil is healthy so that the plants become healthy. Let's see. The roots, all this is what's building the organic matter. And if I break this up, I wish I could find a worm in here. There we go. It's all the black and all the poop. You can see the white marks, but with the straw infused, that's what's gonna allow for this soil to build more organisms. A nice thing too that we always tell, there you go, how good the soil is if I break it apart, and I can crumble it like this, but I can squeeze it together, and I can also form a ball, and then I can break it back apart. That allows for us to know that it's full of organic matter and it's full of a lot of aggregate, which is the life in the soil. It's the sticky substances that are released from the enzymes, from the microbes. It's porous, but also can drain a lot. So that's what you want. My philosophy in soil health is mainly the touch and the feel and understanding. If you can look and see a little bit of life in there, you know that just in a handful on a more microscopic level that there's going to be a lot more organisms going on. And so the more organic matter we can put in to feed all of that life, the more the plants are going to thrive, and the more all the other insects around are going to thrive. And it's just continuing to feed life at that microscopic level, and that builds up throughout the entire ecosystem to feed more and more life. Our density of production has a lot to do with not only the weather, but our rotation of crops. And we just make sure that we're constantly putting enough organic matter back into the soil to feed our crops, but also to make sure that we're not planting the same variety of crops one after another, so we don't breed any bad funguses or bacteria. So as you can see in the fields, we grow a tremendous amount of diversity. Efficiency on our farm means the processes and the protocols that how we do things are followed, and there's certain tools nowadays that enable farmers like us who are smaller to be more efficient with our time, and time management is pretty hard for most farmers. And for us to be able to utilize proper hand tools or proper tools that help us with planting or harvesting, that enables us a lot to be more efficient with our time, which helps a lot in labor costs, helps a lot in also having more time to have dinner during sunset, things like that. This is the paper pot transplanter, and it works with essentially a tray that's held together with paper pieces, and they're all inside of their own little cells. And it's an accordion as you pull it out. We fill it with soil, plant our seeds, and when we're ready to transplant, the biggest components of this is you have to make sure your beds are very well prepped. If there's a lot of undigested organic matter like weeds, roots, a lot of times it'll get stuck within the system and it doesn't allow it to cover back up the soil very well. But there's a furrow on the back that creates the divot, and as the chains start to move back as she pulls this forward, these wheels and a couple discs here will reclose the soil over, and this allows us to plant about 260 cells or so in just a couple minutes rather than using our backs to transplant every one. But the other good thing about this is they're all really nice and neat and straight, so it's easier for weeding. It's just a very efficient process. It's all different depending on how heavy your soil is, so you can adjust the depth too that it's transplanting, and you can walk on the bed as well as it's transplanting. But if there's any pieces that don't get fully covered, you can walk through and uncover them or recover. But as you can see, it's a very simple process, and you don't have to do much. The good thing about this too is the ability for two people to do it very efficiently, and one person can always work behind the other person that's transplanting, so that way you guys can make sure it goes well and smoothly and there's no mistakes throughout the process. And the other good part about this is you can standardize your beds to a certain length, and ours are about 150 feet, which is right about the length of an exact length of a paper pot chain. So it gives us the ability not to have to take out the paper pot chain and put it back in and re-go. So it's exactly one paper pot tray fills one row on one of our beds. This is a tilther, and we use this a lot on the farm. It's a very simple made product. It only requires a drill to make. It's got some tines on the front, and it's got a drive shaft that's run by the drill and just a string that holds the drill's trigger. They have an upgraded one from NeverSink that you can buy too, but this one works well as well. So we're gonna run this on power of 1, not 2, so that way it doesn't get lock it in place. And the goal for this is a couple different things. One is you can make a really good seed bed because it fluffs up that first 1 to 2 inches of soil. The other goal for us is after we prep a bed, we try to do it about a week ahead of time, give it a lot of water, let the weeds germinate, and then we tilt it as well, which will help kill back all those weed seeds on that first inch of soil and kind of give us a head start towards our next planting so we have less weeding to do. And that's a big help, especially in the rainy season, because there's a lot of weeds that come up when we get heavy rains. But you're just gonna walk along the side and you'll see behind us, we did rake this out yesterday, but there's a tremendous amount of weeds in there that are very tiny, and you want to get them before they get too big, or else it starts to have a harder time to actually tilt the bed. So this is the Jang seeder that we use. They have a single, a triple, and I think a 6-way seeder. We only stick with the single. If you're doing a lot of baby greens or a ton of production, I think a 3-way or a 6-way would definitely work, but for us, a single is still okay. It's got a hopper, it's got your sprockets on the inside, a couple more out here, and what these do is for every seed roller that we have, which is a different size hole, and there's anywhere from 6 to 24 holes. We usually only use 24 holes. And what that does in combination with the sprockets is, depending on which sprockets you have set up on the chain, it'll drop a seed every 1/2 inch all the way up to 2.5 inches when it comes to a 24 hole. When we use this larger one and we use our mesclun mix seed, we can fit about 6 to 7 seeds per hole. And when we set it at a sprockets of about 1.3 inches, so for every 1.3 inches, we're dropping about 6 to 7 seeds. We're getting about 60 to 70 seeds per foot on our mesclun mix. And so that's what we look for on our baby greens, is about 60 to 80 seeds per foot. And that's per row. So if we have 10 seeds or 10 rows on a bed, we're getting about 600 to 800 seeds per foot on an actual bed, times 100 foot or 150 feet. So there's a lot of seeds that's being used, but you can switch these out for any kind of seeds that you want. They have small sizes, large sizes for spinach and beet seeds, or even all the way up to corn seeds. But we usually keep it pretty consistent within most of our type of seed production that we actually put into the ground. So I'm going to take these out. I'm going to use a sprocket 10 and 13, and that'll give me the 1.3 inch difference between where each hole will drop seeds. And for the hopper, as we take out the pin, we can exchange the smaller size out for a larger size. And the downside of having about 3 or 6 of these is you'd have to exchange out every hopper and all of the seed rollers instead of just one, so it just takes more time. It's worthwhile if you have a larger farm, but for us, the time management on that doesn't make sense. So we're going to fill this with our mesclun mix. We create our own blend of baby greens, and we just found some varieties that work really well for us up here. And usually it's about almost a full hopper for one full bed. So there's hundreds of thousands of seeds just going into one of those beds. One of the big key points too is to make sure that when you put back in this sprocket disc, it has to be on the left side, because you have your chain here that is in correlation with the actual sprockets to drop the seed. If you put it on the other side, your chain won't move and you won't drop ever any seed. So that's just one more finicky part. You have a furrow here. You can set that at any depth you want. We usually keep it pretty consistent within about a 1/2 inch of a depth. And the plate back here will fold the soil back over, and the wheel will help firm it a little bit. So before we start, we always check the bottom to make sure that our seeds are actually coming out, and they are. It's good on wet days especially, because sometimes dirt clumps up underneath where the seed's supposed to be dropping and it'll get it caught. But the goal is just to follow the line straight, and it does the work for you. The other good thing about this is it's very rugged. So even with all the undulations in the bed and it not being prepped perfectly, it'll run right through all those divots. The earthway cedar and a couple other smaller ones like the 4 pinpoint cedar, it needs to be a really nice bed. But the Jang's probably the best one if you guys have uneven soil too. So we're here in front of our mesclun mixed bed, and we used a greens harvester to cut all of our greens. It's a very simple product made by Farmer's Friend LLC online, but the way you do it is you connect the drill to the drive shaft, and this drive shaft is connected to a saw blade. This entire drive shaft and saw blade is also wrapped around with a band that's connected to the ropes, so they all work in unison. And when you run this, it's going to allow the blade itself to cut our greens while the ropes slap the greens into the chute, but in a soft way. It's not very detrimental to the green's health at all. And it might look so, but if you do it slowly, it allows everything to be cut pretty quickly and pretty efficiently without ruining the greens, and also we don't have to bend over on our hands and knees and cut with a knife or with any scissors as well. So we do a lot of the rainbow carrots, and usually harvest everything at once. We do little bits of shiitake, not too much each week. Cauliflower is one of our bigger crops, and this particular variety is Snow Crown. It's really nice, heavy head, sets a little bit earlier as well. Probably one of the quicker cauliflowers that we have, and the best resistances to disease. These are just our standard oysters. We box into 7-pound cases, and these are the ones that we ship across to a whole bunch of distributors and other places on the islands. The cool part about this chill is you can get these that are used and very inexpensive too. It's run with an air conditioning unit and a CoolBot unit. And so the best part about this is this has a sensor system that has a heating rod, and it tricks the sensor within the air conditioning unit to think that it's warmer than it really is. And so it continues to stay on while the CoolBot is the one that's actually triggering the temperature. So this is set currently at 36 degrees, and it's currently at 44. But this will say it's at 73. So it actually doesn't understand what it's reading. So it's a good way to do a cheap mechanism for a cool box, you could say. The biggest point I want to really touch up on is that a farm isn't just a 1 or 2 person job. It's a job of a whole team of people, and I'm extremely grateful for the team that we have. We're not only friends, but everyone works great, and everyone has a perfect place in the farm that allows us to work efficiently. And I think that goes along with how efficient a farm can be, and that's because we're a community too. I think that's the most important part about farming, isn't just growing the food, but getting along with one another.
Wonderful. So, really inspiring videos. Am I on this? Okay, thank you. I was told that I'm not looking into the camera. Am I looking into the camera now? I have no idea where the camera is. Oh, yeah, see, I'm looking up though. Getting instruction here. Now am I looking into the camera?
Look at your.
That's what I'm trying to do. Where's my camera?
On the right and the left. The camera's
On the left. Hey, how's it? The light's on the right, what can I say? All right. So, it's a farm, and I'm Italian, so come on. What am I gonna do? So we have Mark and Leah Damon here today with us physically, and Michael Marchand. Michael, are you on? Katie, is Michael on?
They were, yes, they're here.
Okay, can you patch Michael and Lauren in, please?
Sure
They,
can.
So we should probably get Mark and Leah in front of the computer, Vince, so we can get them physically on camera. Yeah? Or they want to get on my camera.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, there's Michael. Michael, your green screen needs to be clicked off.
You beat me out.
Looks like you're doing some psilocybin over there.
We've got two raised hands in the audience.
Yeah, well, we have questions. Who are the questions for? Okay,
If you've got your raised hand, you can post in the chat feature or in the Q&A your question. Michael, that video was awesome. That was so inspiring.
Thank you.
Michael.
It was working prior to. Interesting.
Yeah,
A little better.
green screen piece, is it unchecked?
No, I can't upload a video if I don't click green screen.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I can't upload the background if I don't have it.
Put the blur background on. Well, that's fine. You can see you good there. That's fine. Good. Okay.
We do have one question, Michael, from Peggy Hansen. What are you doing to control slugs and the risk of rat lungworm?
Yeah, good question. Well, slugs come and go with the seasons. For the most part, the rainier seasons that come during the winter time will lay down sluggo, but that's about the only thing that we can do as an organic farm, out in the field at least, because if it rains too much too, the sluggo, since it's just based off of iron phosphate, a little bit of fertilizer essentially, it'll just wash into the soil. So it only works when it's dry. We do wash our greens and we double wash them during the winter time where it ends up getting even more wet. And we try to do our best to keep the weeds away from the field because that's where all the slugs really want to go. When it comes to the specific parasite of the rat lungworm, I don't believe that we have any of that up here, nor do I think there's really much of it on Maui, if at all. But we're at a pretty cold climate and we don't have the semi-slug, which is the main carrier. We do have little teeny tiny slugs, almost like half the size of one of your fingernails. And those are hard to see, but the washing process where we bubble everything first and then we dunk it a second time in another fresh water and then we spin it, dry it on a table. So it goes through a lot of processes to see if there's any slugs that have come out. And we always recommend that everybody else washes their produce as well. So it's not about 100% on the farmer, but everyone else has to make sure that the food that they're getting also is checked at.
Chapter has done a lot of work around educating folks on how to handle, manage their farming areas so they're not growing semi-slugs in the environments in that respect. So, yeah, there's a lot of work still needs to be done in the spirit of being conscious of all this, but like Michael says, it's up to the consumers to ensure that, clean ingredients and do your part. So is there any other questions in the till right now?
Yeah, we've got one. Have you tried foliar feeding solutions to help with resistance? I might have not pronounced that right.
Is that for me or for Mark and Leah?
I don't know.
Both of you. Yeah.
Resist
both.
to anything specific?
For slug control.
Oh, no, we've never tried that.
You know, I know Joel, Coca Farms, he was growing strawberries. And I said, Joel, how's your slug, you know? He said, well, you know, I went out last night and I collected all of them. And then I went the following night and any that were left, I just took the population away. I don't have any problem with slugs. So I thought it was kind of interesting. They physically, you know, went out to his farm with a flashlight and just took them all, physically removed them. I mean, you know, there's some management ability there. I know for me, in the garden area on our farm that I put coffee grinds around the perimeter of that garden, and I never saw a slug in it. So something tells me that they don't like coffee grinds. They're more tea drinkers.
Well, spends a lot of time in his fields actually participating. But we run a fertigator, which you might want to explain.
Yeah, you mean for foliar feed?
Yes.
A fertigation, which is an irrigator that has a fertilizer component to it. So as it's watering, it's fertilizing. So they call it fertigating. You can pour in pumps, and as long as it's water soluble, then it can be. But we've also, coming back to slugs, we've done that same thing as well, which is go out at night and pick them up until you've devastated the population. That works really well.
It's amazing, isn't it? So that's why it's really important, as we advocate for our farms, to live on your farm. You know, I come out all times of day on our farm, and sometimes butt naked. You know, I mean, it's gotta be done, and you know, you don't change. Nobody. But you know, it's a thing where it's really important that you live where you grow your food. Too much information. So how about the room here? Does anybody have any questions, farmers? You got any questions for, yeah, Matt?
What is Michael's elevation, and does he have problems with growing cauliflower? Is it just like,
Michael, what's your elevation? Do you have any problem with growing cauliflower with what, Matt?
I'm just wondering if it's easy for him to grow cauliflower.
Is it easy for
to
you?
spray it for bugs, or does he have to wrap it up so it doesn't get sunburned?
Do you have to wrap, you hear that, Mike?
Yeah. I can hear it. Honestly, cauliflower is actually one of the easier crops that we grow. We found a few varieties that work really well. Bishop, Snow Crown, and Song TSJ. It's a Japanese green stem variety. They're a little bit quicker, so it seems like they kind of beat out the bugs that want to come up. Some of our longer varieties in the purple and the cheddar, they end up getting a little bit of more susceptibility to fungal damage when it comes to heavier rains. And we are at 32 or 3,300 feet in elevation, so pretty high up. We do get really wet winters, but when it comes to sunburn, we've never wrapped our leaves. We've never felt like we've had to. Maybe it's not as bright white as you find in the store, but overall it still is a fine product, and all of the people that we sell them to is perfectly fine too. So that's an easier crop for us. Broccoli we have a harder time with because there seems to be more fungal damage from that during the rainy season, and that's why we choose broccolini, because we can pick for many weeks. And so if it does become a rainy week, we might lose 1 week's worth of picking, but we don't lose the whole crop. But yeah, we enjoy the cauliflower. It seems more resilient than most of the other crops that we grow, actually.
Well, you know, you hit a really great point too on time management. Can you, both you folks, can you speak about your time management concerns and issues and how you're addressing them?
One of the more difficult parts is that we probably work 60 hours a week, both of us, and then all of our helpers work 40 hours, unless they're on part-time. But you know, in terms of, there's always more than you can do. So you have to get into a headset that you can just do what you can do and enjoy the process. You'll never get ahead of the game.
You know what's really beautiful with that answer too, folks, is that I go up to that farm and I deliver our greens to their store, and the vibe on that farm, I mean, I wouldn't go up to deliver those greens as far as I have to go to get to their farm. But it's because of the vibe on that farm. I just look forward to doing that. And it's an amazing vibration, a wonderful just feeling on that farm that just built around. Mike, you want to jump on that? Time matter?
Yeah. It's ironic, actually. Lauren and I just had a big weekend to restructure our time management because we haven't necessarily been running the farm. The farm's been running us. And I think that's probably something that many farmers struggle with. And the quality time of relationships and how do you manage that romantically or friendships with the amount of work that has to get done on a farm on a daily basis, because there's always something to do. And for us, of course, little tools helps a lot, having a team, and I guess coming to a point in efficiency and being content with where we're at and with where our growth is at, and the financial security component as well. I think the first few years of the building or creation of any farm is going to be overwhelming. And there's not really probably any way around that. But I think as things get established and there's less projects to do on weekends and things begin to cycle better, you get used to the seasonal differences and what crops grow better. So that way you're not losing certain crops in certain seasons, and just planning ahead. I think it is definitely a big portion of that. The people that you're with and just having boundaries within ourselves to be able to say, okay, it's 5 p.m. and I'm going to go have dinner with my wife, whether or not I have work to do. Because it can always wait, but relationships, I don't think can always wait. So.
Where is Lauren? Is she going to have a cameo appearance here?
She's on deliveries right now.
Yeah, I get it. You know, Irene is home on the farm too. Our wives are the wind underneath our wings, in a sense, right? Always. And a big part of our farms. So, you know, one thing for me, is there any other questions, Katie? Reba has a question. Okay.
Oh,
Reba,
okay.
President of HAWAIIARMERS Chapter. Yes, Reba.
So the members in Haleakala really miss your UPIC system. Can you talk to the future of how you're going to open for COVID for our residents here, maybe?
Can you repeat the question?
I understand.
You can explain.
So when COVID hit, we had basically a whole different staff at that time, and they were very afraid. And so we took the UPIC and we shut it down and we made it us pick. So we pick, and then the farm stand up, and so we could put all the products that we are able to produce out in the farm stand. And UPIC was a spiritual experience for a lot of people, and they really miss it. But I can say that letting any stranger into your gardens is a big mistake. And the plants suffered tremendously. Although the people benefited tremendously. It was such a wonderful experience, and the relationship with the plants and the soil was fantastic, but it was much more than, it was all we could do at the time. You know, we didn't have time to pick. And so that's part of that time management. You know.
Could you add some sort of training, like you know, if they want to be eligible for the UPIC program, you have them go through some sort of online video training and question and answer. They pay you for the training as a membership fee, and then you have a card and you come over there. You know,
You could actually make that work. I think you could.
We had that. We had videos.
But it's still, when you get so many people coming, it's just so difficult to manage everybody. And your farm staff is just running around, you know, tackling people. It's crazy.
It turns into an unplugged of policing of people pulling up whole kale plants because they think that's how you think.
They come in with the knife and they cut the whole thing. So people generally,
So we can go to your store and restaurant.
And you can buy, even if you have no lawn space or no soil space, you can buy pots and you can grow things. And we can just start having wonderful relationships with your plants and the seeds in your mouth before you plant them. There's so many wonderful things you can do to create a relationship with the soil and the plants. We tried and time changed.
And I loved it when COVID hit, everyone was interested in putting in their own garden. And we sold a lot of starts and it was great. And then people would come and say, hey, this is kind of hard to do. So they just all tried.
I think it's a gratification issue, right? The reason why they like to come is because it's all there. You're doing all the work. They can see the fruits of your labor instantly, versus putting the time and effort. So it's almost like, anyways, I had a question for both of you.
Wait a second, now, this is Vincent Kimura, president of our Untitled Chapter.
Yeah, question. Mike, and actually all of you kind of alluded to a component on what is, because there's a lot of stresses. As you alluded to, you have 60 hours a week, it never ends. But could you share maybe one or two things that help you when you're in the hardest moments and you're thinking about like, what the heck, arms up, what is it that you think about or do or decompress or disconnect to help you get through?
Drugs. No.
Well, my personal thing is just to remember that life is about service. It really is. The most rewarding life is about service. And there's a lot of inner chatter that talks about the self. And it's like, I'm not getting what I need. So once you get on the side of, no, I'm here to do this, you stop resisting. And then a lot of that just disappears. And you just get the work done, and there's a reward to that it's very deep. It's about the quality of your life and what you're doing, and do you love what you're doing? Why are you doing it? So it's a constant question, and I always revert back to it. What you do for service. Beautiful.
And I'm very fiery, so I have to really manage myself every day. And it's very important that I get up and do my pranayama and my meditation, or else the day goes south. And that's the most important thing. If at 10 o'clock you're doing invoicing, it's like, oh, this is so cool. But for Michael, I just wonder how you guys do it, because we're at the end of a long honey extraction, and I'm just like, how long can we go on with these massive days? And for you to just go every day, you're doing this without too concentrated efforts. I mean, I think I'm really thankful that honey harvest is only twice a year when you guys harvest every day. I mean, you have a manageable way to run the farm stand, but honey harvest takes it's just the next level of chaos.
And in Mike's situation too, I mean, it's interesting that all 5 of these farm videos have that vibe I was talking about. I get when I come to your farm, Michael's farm. It's almost like it's the life in the land that is just permeating through our being. And we run into fellow Mahi'i, we just have this connection doesn't have words. Just it's a vibration of just feeling, sharing with each other. Yeah. So, any other questions from the table? We have all our chapter presidents here this afternoon, and I know Christian Zuckerman from Christian Zuckerman of our Hawaiian chapter. How did Michael's farm speak to you? Because I know you're growing a lot of your lower elevation, but you're growing a lot of microgreens or salad greens and stuff. How did that? What inspired you there? Yeah, there you are.
I can't wait to go visit your farm on Saturday. It's like really, I want to see it in person, and I know we buy product from you over on Oahu, and it'd be nice to see where we grow it. Really like the whole mushroom substrate technique. I think start growing mushrooms ourselves just to implement that.
Yeah, it's so cool. And that's what this is about, being able to demonstrate and share with one another, because there's no finish line. And it's about how diverse we can make our systems to make it more resilient. Yeah.
There's some questions in the chat. Are Mark and Leah still there?
Yes, they are.
Here's one for them. Can you share about your choice of hive? Is there a choice between for the bees and their health, for the honey, or are there ones that are good for both?
I think if you're backyard beekeeping or you're only keeping a few hives, then one of the more natural, self-drawn, let the bees do everything. We have a commercial model that, we have hundreds of colonies. And so we've sort of made a deal with the devil. And we use ling straw and we use a Pure Co foundation, which is a food grade plastic. But one of the things we do is we coat that plastic with beeswax. So the bees aren't really in contact with the plastic. It's a very thick coating on there and they really love it. So that seems to work the best. But we've always used lang straws. We've done some top bar stuff, but because of our numbers, we need things to be all the equipment needs to be the same and interchangeable and easy to use. So we use the lang straw. And I haven't seen any health issues about that. They seem to do very well. So yeah, that's one we use.
Awesome. Here's another question for you guys. Did you follow a plan or guide for building your compost screen sifter?
Built that off of watching a few YouTubes and then just figuring it out. I've often thought about putting a plan together so that we could share that on a piece of paper. But I just haven't had time to get there.
And then the bike rims, we went to the Makawao bike shop and said, do you have any busted bike rims that you could save for us? And you just start kind of figuring out what'll work. And
My personal addition to it was using the electric drill. And if you use the right size electric drill, meaning a 1/2-inch drive, it's geared down inside the drill itself. So if you skip one of the processes of having to gear the system down so it spins slowly enough. So that was my personal addition to the design.
Amazing.
Did
Michael,
you
here's
guys
a-
get patenting was yours and his, Michael's, and yeah.
we'll give it, right?
Well, I mean, patenting for the sake of helping both you're always, innovating, looking at things, right? But I think the best way about that is helping others by distributing knowledge for the commons of anything.
And I think that's a great thing. Get the information out there, make it easier for everyone.
Katie, you have some more?
Yeah, Michael, here's a question. I'm pretty sure this is for you. While your video did not focus on mushroom cultivation, I'm curious if you have your own tissue lab and style of mushroom cultivation that you find works in Hawaii.
Yeah, good question. No, we don't have our own lab here, but we work with one of our partners, Charles Tressiter, and he's built out a lab a little bit farther down the road from us. And so he makes all of our spawn. So we outsource all of the lab work. He gets petri dishes and brings those in and works with the cultures themselves to expand those onto grain spawn twice and then onto a sawdust spawn, which then he gives to us. And tissue cultures can work. It's a little bit more finicky. You have to get really clean cultures from the mushrooms that you want. And we've just found better success with being able to go direct from petri dishes from people that are growing these strictly for essentially those tissue cultures rather than us doing it ourselves. It's kind of like saving seed or buying seed. For us, we don't have the capacity at our scale, nor the proper tools and processing equipment to save seed. So we do buy seed to bring it in. It's cheaper that way. It would cost us a tremendous amount of money to let fields go and save the seed and then try to process it properly, especially in the really wet weather that we have. So that's similar to what we do with the laboratory. We might one day build out our own laboratory just to do a little bit more spawn, but overall, Charles does it great for us. And so he's kind of our main partner within this mushroom growing operation.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
NRCS, your greenhouses that you're growing your tomatoes and stuff, was that an NRCS?
Yeah. Yep. Those are from Farmer's Friend. They're from Tennessee and they're caterpillar tunnels. We got the Gothic tunnels with the lift kits, and overall they're extremely inexpensive for how useful they are to keep rain off, to be able to grow upwards too with our lower and lean systems on tomatoes and cucumbers. And they have been a huge help, and the NRCS actually reimburses a significant portion of what those cost, and they actually, based off of their square foot method, will pay more than what the caterpillars themselves cost, because they're usually based off of like larger infrastructurally cemented in greenhouses. So those are great for anybody that wants to quickly put up a greenhouse. It takes about a day with 2 people. If it's your first time putting it up, maybe it takes a couple days, but they're very easy to put up and down. You can move them if you need to. They don't have to be cemented in. They're pretty sturdy against heavy winds too. We put up extra wiggle wire channels, and I think we could probably get around 100 miles per hour and it still stay sturdy, other than maybe the poly ripping. But they're really solid tunnels, and we haven't had any issues. We've been extremely satisfied with them, especially for the price point.
Yeah, that wiggle wire is really a game changer.
Yeah.
In holding down the poly, and holding down the skin. So that's great. And so, people need to understand that NRCS out there is quite the resource for us farmers. And what would you say? There's Jason Hugh here on island, yeah, on Maui. Is that who you work with directly?
That's who we work with, is Jason.
Great, great. So folks can get in touch on each island. There's NRCS offices, and Travis Thomason is our Pacific Region Director, and doing a really great job there. And it's all about what we're about, so really appreciate all the work that NRCS brings federally to the table. I would just like to hear, while we have some time here, we have 15 minutes left of this session. I want to hear something from both of you folks on your farms, as what you'd like to share coming out of seeing yourself on video, what was addressed on your farm. If there's any other jewels or pearls you'd like to share regarding your farming operation that can be a demonstration for others to be able to inspire and move them in that direction, please utilize this time. As the saying goes, you want to make $1 million at farming, you start with 2.
Yeah.
But anything you want to share that you guys, in addition to that wonderful video we just saw?
Well, is that for me?
Yeah,
So,
please.
so the community aspect is huge. It's a deep reservoir of not only physical health, but there's camaraderie, there's a sense of working together. It's super important. And to me, when I'm worn out, but I go into the staff's quarters and they're all laughing and having a great time and joking around, to me, it just lifts my spirits. So it just makes me so happy to hear people laughing and having a good time in their work. And that, to me, that's success. Even if the farm doesn't make money, it doesn't matter. It's about the quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really, really important things. I think if you keep that as your focus, as your quality of life, whatever that looks like, then that's your guiding light. Because you can get really frustrated about the rest of it. So that's what I like.
For me, I started to go, what did the body and soil start?
Body and soil we did from 2001 to 2014.
I think I missed 2001, but I think I was at every one after that. And it was so inspiring to me, Jerry Bernetti, and I was like, I was going to have that raw milk. I was going to have that raw milk. And then, you just figure out what's important in your life, and you figure out where you want to put your resources and where you want to spend your money and where you want to do the best you can with what you can purchase as far as land goes. And it's a great direction, and it's really fun, and you get to eat the best food.
Sure. Beautiful. Michael, you got something you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I could piggyback off of Mark when it comes to the team and the community aspect of the farm. I think beyond the physical, the physical hardships of it that is exhausting on a daily basis, I think even more difficult is to have very clear communication, proactive communication, everybody be able to respect one's boundaries and and stay in good relationship with one another, or if you guys are leasing property from other people, to make sure that that's clear. I think clarity within relationships is probably what has helped us out the most, to make sure that we say what we do what we say we're going to do, and where our agreements are. And for us, what we're learning the most is making those strong boundaries. So when we do say no to certain things and we say yes to other things, that we can show up more fully for the things that we say yes for, because it's really hard to say no in the beginning, and then you want to spread yourself so thin, and then it becomes really difficult to show up fully. And I think that's probably the biggest issues that we've dealt with, is just having the good boundaries, which I touched up on before. And yeah, getting along with one another, helping out when each other needs it, and being there for one another. Finances is definitely a stress in the beginning, and I know for myself, like, there's many times the question of what's the point of all this? Like, is it really worth all of this hard work? And I think for me, to touch up on the previous question too, it's thinking about the future, kind of like what Mark said, and being in that place of service, but wanting to live a life that feels more free, even though there's a ton of obligations and responsibilities. The freedom to be able to choose every day that we wake up to be here, to be on the land, and that to me gives me a sense of freedom for myself and for what I'm really trying to build for our children in the future. And so that is what keeps me being driven, and also to make sure that I'm in good relationship with the people that are around me.
Beautiful. I know, and Leah bringing up about body and soil, folks don't know, but Steve Wilson of Kumalani Farms used to be the farmer there on the land that Michael's farming now. And that's where we held 7 of our body and soil conferences. And Sam Vessel, the owner of that land, has been a very big supporter of agriculture happening on the land. She understands and appreciates and values the vibe that it brings to the land. So shout out to Sam and Michael, and Mark and Leah. I so appreciate you folks for opening up your farms to have these videos done. Maui County has been a big supporter of us being able to demonstrate what our mission is. And through these videos, I think Akaku just did a wonderful job in applying that. And so is there any other questions from around the table that you want to direct to our host here, our host?
I'd ask that same question, bro.
Yeah, Drake.
How resilient do you think your farm is against rising fuel prices?
Okay, so Drake is our president of East Hawaii chapter, and he said, how resilient do you feel your farm is to rising fuel prices?
Oh, nice. Does Mark want to go first? Oh, there you
go. Go ahead. I'll tag on. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, gotcha. Well, Mark and Leah do a great job with the whole no-till approach. We tried that, and we did find better results by being able to turn the soil. We get really heavy rains, and that tends to compact the soil some. But I would say if we came to a point where we really couldn't use any bit of fuel, there wouldn't be an issue to use our drill and our tilther and just broad fork and be able to turn beds over without needing to do any tillage. It does make it easier and more efficient, because it is a lot more labor to have to broad fork beds and make sure that it's very clean before we replant. But overall, I would say that it would still work. The fuel prices doesn't have a big effect because we don't run our walk behind BCS machine that much. And it does seem to be pretty efficient overall. I mean, maybe we use on average 1 gallon a week of fuel, but I'm not even sure if we use that much, because we really prep large spaces at a time. So some weeks we're not even prepping at all. But overall, we would just switch over to a more no-till method, I think, if we didn't have access to proper fuel.
So the machinery we use mostly is the tractor for turning compost and moving things around that need to be moved. So again, we don't use very much fuel, probably a gallon a week of diesel. So it's pretty low input.
But the tractor is like 10 men, so it's an awesome thing.
Do you guys do any deliveries? As far as like product delivery?
Honey?
Like honey distribution? I know you mentioned your wife's out on the road right now. Like about increase in like fuel prices, like will that impact?
So we have a photovoltaic system and that runs the car. And we deliver on Fridays, wholesale accounts, West Maui, South Maui, and up.
Yeah, good question. We do a lot of deliveries. So with rising fuel costs, the easy answer would be we pass that along to the consumer. But I guess the best way would be to get a car that is electric. I know that they're coming out with more delivery vehicles with a particular company right now. That just went on the market publicly, and maybe that would be the next investment, is for us to work off of electricity. Part of the farm is solar, but we are on the grid, and maybe running full solar and being able to charge our vehicles with an electricity would be the next investment for us into the future. So that way we aren't reliant upon the fuel costs rising.
So I have a question too. Being that you folks are up country, any issues with deer? Any issues with animal?
Yeah, we got hammered this year with deer. A whole group of them came in and wiped out an entire block and half of another block in pretty much just one night. So we put up fencing around, and we bought the 8-foot polypropylene black fencing, and it has done wonders. We've actually seen tracks come up to the fence, a whole bunch of tracks, and go right back away. So they can't jump over it, or at least they're choosing not to. So it's mainly a deterrent. And if they were afraid and they ran into it, yeah, there's probably a potential for them to get through, but they mainly come at night. They don't come during the daytime. And we lost a lot from having that. But I think we mainly fenced in maybe around 3 to 4 acres total. And it cost us only $3,000 with the polypropylene fencing. So it was very efficient overall, and it's helped us drastically. We have a big issue with birds too, but actually the deer fencing has helped with pheasants, because pheasants tend to walk into our fields a lot and not too many fly in. So that's been also a winner for both of those pests for us. But the deer was probably the biggest issue this year than we've ever seen in the past few years.
What do you guys?
We have 4-foot perimeter hot wire fencing, and oddly enough, the deer have not really penetrated that. They haven't jumped over it. I know there's herds of 50 right next door. At night, you can hear them and see them, but they don't really come into our property. So the 4-foot fence has proven to be okay.
So what they're doing is they're eating 2 properties down at Wells, and who's outside managing them. But the neighbors have put up the 8-foot fence, and
it's been a hard year for everyone in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Do you all have pressure from Lapa'au, also the big, or just deer?
Big pressure.
No big pressure for us.
Mike?
Nope. Well, a little bit, but they never came into our field. They mainly stayed in the pastures, and they really put their snouts down in our heavier grasses. We've seen it happen one time where they went through an entire bed of carrots, but after the deer fencing too, we've stapled down the fencing to the ground, so we haven't seen any more issues. It was mainly from the drought. They're just looking for a lot of moisture because it's so dry.
yeah, now it has a good people you can call for pigs. They come at night. Hunters.
Okay. So with that, any closing remarks? Anybody want to share anything here at the table and or our farmers? Yeah, Robert. Robert's got a question. Robert Go is the president of the HANA chapter, Robert.
What insurance do you have of losing your entire crop? Do you have crop insurance? Have you investigated that?
Crop insurance.
No, we don't have any, crop insurance. We're so diversified though, if we got wiped out, we still have honey and John and the kitchen.
And each other.
And how about you, Matt?
Yeah, the same with us, Mark and Leah. We're so diversified that the time I think that we did speak to FSA about crop insurance, it didn't almost make sense because we're not growing just one or a couple crops. And the time it would take to fill out all these forms and how quickly crops rotate for us. And even like with our mescaline mixes, like we would have to fill out each individual crop within that mix. None of it really made sense and wasn't applicable to us as a small diversified farm. So we don't have crop insurance. We have farm insurance, but that's more so if like some of our infrastructure gets hit with a hurricane or something like that. So nothing in regards to the crops, because when one crop is lost, other crops are fine. And mushrooms is a big help too in the wintertime when we have a harder time with all the rains.
We got one more question, then we're going to close up. Okay.
So Janet's asking, well, one, she said amazing presentations and she loves what you guys are doing, but she had a question in regards to viability. So if you had to comply with many laws and regulations that apply, would you be able to pay yourselves and your team a living wage?
What's a living wage?
After 6 years, yeah. Probably. But go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just saying, what is a living wage? Because there's just so many different people's opinions on that. So I wonder.
Usually around 40,000 a year.
40,000 a year.
40,000
A year, each person.
Each person.
Yeah, no, we don't get paid.
Or $20. That's called a quality job.
Right. Yeah. I love that saying, pay yourself first. I just trying to wrap my head around it. How do you do that?
That's why it's service, right? We service.
Yeah. Well, let's,
I mean, what I can speak to in regards to that is if everyone's on the books and I'm employed, and the company, such as ourselves or Mark and Leah, are paying everybody health insurance on top of workers' comp and workers' disability, then it's about $5.25 extra per hour of work. So whatever you are paying somebody, if you're paying them $20 an hour, you're actually, your cost is $25.25 an hour. So that's really what it depends upon. I think most farms probably run with 1099 contractors. And that's probably an easier way around certain regulations. But when it comes to paying someone a $40,000 a year salary on top of paying the $5.25 per hour with health insurance, I think it's very difficult because our food system and the way it's been set up over the last hundreds of years doesn't support the cost of food to be able to support the cost of farmers for paying proper wages. And then when the cost of food goes up, people complain. So really, the only reason we have cheap food is because labor is extremely cheap on a huge operation. And it's because most people on mainland are probably making $7 an hour or less, and they're brought in from other countries. So that's a really loaded question, and I don't think that there's a clear answer for that at all.
So Leah has something to share.
So you have to barter in what you trade in, or you have to look in Hawaii and what is the most expensive thing we have? Well, it's housing. So a large portion of the people that work on the farm live on the farm. And so that's part of their trade. And it makes a great community. It makes you work out your problems really fast or leave. And so there's a lot of things like if you have people living on the farm, you have them eating the food, you have them really committed to what you're doing, you're on the bus line. You just have to look at your assets and see if you can share them in a way that people value them.
Beautiful. Well said.
So on that note, I wanted to close with saying that there is a workforce development program right now through the county. And if you know of anyone that's displaced worker, whether they're fired or just got laid off or whatever, it's an $18 an hour, part-time, with full medical. So get in touch with HFUU at hfuu.org. And if you know of anyone that's looking for work, it's light work. You only need to lift 330,000 pounds. It's light work and it's farm work and it's really gratifying and satisfying. So please, it's HFUU at hfuu.org. So thank you, everybody. So what we're going to be doing is we're closing for today, our convention. We do have a board meeting next couple of 2.5 hours. We won't bore you with. We're going to be working here on that though. But then tomorrow morning, we open up with Dan Kittredge at 10 o'clock Hawaii time. So log in about 10 of, okay? And Dan Kittredge is developing the bionutrient meter. I just got one. And I have our East Hawaii President Drake Weiner with his, what do you call your phone? It's like
It's Android. What is it?
Android, right? He's got it calibrated. He's got it calibrated. And Dan is going to speak to that because this is where the rubber is going to meet the road going forward from my point of view, is that we're going to be able to nutrient test our food. And so people that want to, say reduce and, mine the soil of all its life or whatever to grow food, well, their nutrient density isn't going to be that high to where folks like Mark and Leah and Michael and Lauren will have food that will test high in nutrient density and they'll get paid more. So as I like to say, us as farmers, we may be foolish, stupid. So, this is what's going to come in the future. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to HFUUP. If you're not a member, please consider being a membership and see you tomorrow. Aloha.